Look what jumped onto the back of my truck while I was down at the dump getting rid of rubbish. This fireplace was upside down and half full of water with the door seized up, but I got some vice grips onto it and wrestled the door open, emptied the water out, and this is the top baffle plate. It looks to be in decent condition apart from the barnacles growing on it. Nothing that a good sandblasting won't fix. So join me while I pull this thing to bits and we'll just see what state the firebox is really in, and then I can attend to any repairs that need doing and give this thing a refurbish. And this is going to be the stove for my new cabin. You would have seen a handful of fire bricks in the first shot while it was still sitting on the back of my ute. They were all broken and not complete, but there is enough there for me to get some measurements off so that I can make a new set, because I've already done some online research and found that a new set of fire bricks for this is available, but it's $320 for the set. So I'm going to make my own. What a surprise! More of that later. Let's get this thing pulled apart. I've given all of the nuts and bolts a squirt with WD-40, and now I'm into it with my impact screwdriver and little sockets and things like that. And what I'm trying to do is remove the little skirt off the front here so that I can take the door off, and then I can remove the heat shields from around the side and have a good look at the firebox and just make sure that it hasn't rusted out from sitting there with water in it for so long. Now, you must never be nervous when you're pulling apart something that cost you nothing, because you've got nothing to lose. So don't be nervous, just be sensible. Have a good look around for any screws, rivets, anything like that. I've found that this has got screws around the bottom and screws down the front, but at the back it's got a couple of rivets that are hidden inside holes. So the outer heat shields come off with the screws. This inner heat shield is held by rivets. I'm going to have to drill those out. So I'll just drill the heads off the rivets, and then this piece can be removed. You can see the two ports that block up the wetback holes for the hot water heating in the back. The firebox looks to be in reasonably good condition because it's protected by the fact that it has fire bricks inside. This is a little ash skirt just to stop anything dropping out the door and falling onto your floor. Remove that, and now that that's gone I can slide the door off, but I'm just looking at the crustiness around the edges of every panel, which is a typical sign that something has been powder coated with an epoxy paint which was used probably 20 years ago on machinery and outdoor furniture and things like that. It was more durable. The powder coating system looks really flash when it's in the shop, but it starts to deteriorate soon after you buy it. And it normally deteriorates from the edges inwards because the powder coating is at its thinnest on the edges. So you'll see that these pieces have all suffered degradation from the edges inwards. And what I've got now is my impact driver. That's like a stout screwdriver with a wee mechanism with a wee mechanism inside it. And that mechanism is a coarse helix screw. So you have hardened screwdriver tips that you put into your screw, bash it on the back with a large hammer, and that prescribes a slight twisting motion, which will help you get screws out more times than not. Really handy tool when you're pulling rusty things apart. You can see there where the base of this is slightly bent. That's an easy job for me to straighten once I've got it apart. I can imagine that this thing was taken out of a house a couple of years ago, put behind the shed, fell over, filled up with water, the grass grew up around it, and it just sat there And then they decided they were having a big clean up and throw that old stove away. So, as I say, it was still half full of water. The door had rusted shut and somebody had broken the handle trying to get the door open. So I'll have to make a new handle. This rust has taken its toll, but because I've got a sandblaster, I'll be able to make this thing look nice again in no time. Where I'm pointing now, that bit that I just cleaned, there is a little bit of wear along there, so I will remove that piece and weld in a new one. Now this is my wet sandblaster. Anybody who's got a petrol or diesel powered sandblaster over about 5 horsepower can buy one of these fittings to go onto their water blaster. You need dry sand, and what it does is through Venturi action it sucks the dry sand up the delivery hose and then mixes it with the water in the black part of the nozzle and chucks it at whatever you're spraying. Makes a great job. It's very, very, what's the word for it? It's very dial-inable. You can do light sandblasting and heavy sandblasting by changing the water pressure speed. By changing the water blaster's speed, you can slow it down and have less pressure. Once again, you'll see that all the degradation on the paint has happened from the edges inwards. Real telltale sign of bad prep for powder coating. Most things that you buy have very little preparation before they sandblast it. Because these fins to let the heat out have got more edge area, there's more chance of it starting to peel away from there. That label on the back gives me the date of manufacture and the manufacturer and model. It was built in 2006 and it's called a Kent Firenzo. They were a 6 kilowatt domestic fire, not suitable for cooking, but I'm going to have a play with it, do a few little modifications, see if I can get some more heat out of it, see if I can make it more suitable for cooking on. And I might even build a brick heat sink around it so that it holds the heat through the night. And what I'm doing here, now that it's been lightly sandblasted, is putting on a rust killer. And this rust killer works quite quickly. It's a water-based one, and it starts turning black pretty much as soon as you put it on. And about an hour later you've got a substrate that's dry, hard and ready to paint over. Or do further prep work if you want to do a really nice job of it. So much of this never gets seen, so all I want to do is just make sure that it's not going to rust anymore. My sandblaster's a bit lethargic because I'm not using proper sandblasting sand. I'm just using ordinary beach sand, which I buy in bags from the garden centre. It does the job, but not as good as pure garnet. Using this type of rust treatment, you must never put your dirty brush into the bottle. You always pour from the bottle into a container and then only dip the brush into the container, because this stuff goes off when it hits rust. Your brush has touched it, your brush has got semi-activated liquid on it, and if you dip your brush back into that container, next time you come to use it you'll find that the whole container's gone black and it's just not going to do its rust converting job anymore. You'll ruin what's left in the container. I'm using a good quality satin black here from CRC. I'm putting that over the primer that they use called the Zinc Rich Primer. And the next job is to make myself some new fire bricks. So what I've done is just punched in the measurements of the bricks because I looked them up on the internet and confirmed it with the pieces that I had left over. And I now know how much mix I need to make to create the raw materials to make 7 fire bricks. I'm using pumice, cement and plaster. The plaster helps to make it fireproof and means that we can use less cement. So I'm using a really basic mixture of 3 scoops of each. The pumice is the insulative fireproof component, the cement is what's going to stick it together, and the plaster makes it dry faster. So I've made up a mould with these lengths of steel, and I'm now going to use the kitchen film in the mould. It's a little bit windy out here, so I'm a wee bit messy. I should be taking more care of this, but it really doesn't matter what these things look like because they're going to be in the fireplace. Nobody's going to notice them. I'm using pieces of the old fire brick as end stops. And they also give me a gauge to get the exact width. By putting the tubes down either side of them, I end up with a long strip. That's enough for me to make 7 bricks out of. And once they're dry, I'll cut them with the diamond masonry saw on the grinder. Now it looks a bit porridgey, doesn't it? That's because it has no sand in it. And the reason it has no sand is because the sand and the cement expand at different rates, and that's what causes cracking and exploding. By using a lesser amount of cement and the pumice, we end up with bricks that don't explode, and that's a bonus. So I've just put half the mixture into the mould, and I'll spatula it out and make sure it's down into the corners, and then I'll pour in the rest of the mixture to bring it up to the top edge. We've all seen bought fire bricks broken and cracked, and it's an aggressive environment, it's not surprising, but here's my little hack. I've got lengths of chicken wire, chicken mesh. I believe they call it hardware cloth in the States. And whatever. So what I've got is lengths of that. I'm pushing those in. So they'll be in the middle of each brick. Just making sure that I don't get the glad wrap caught in the edges. Tease that out as I lay it in. And once I've got the mesh in, I'll pour in this second layer. I'm going to say that it's a lot like baking a cake, except that you have to ice it before you bake it, and that's what I'll do in a moment. Just finishing it off, I'm calling the icing, but you've got to get your recipe right. You've got to have the right tools for the job, and you've got to get everything done in the right order. So there we go. Nice wet mixture. Wet mixture makes sure that there's no air bubbles in it, and no air bubbles means, once again, no explosions. With beach hop here every year, we have a lot of the people who work around here invest in classic cars, and so it's not just beach hop weekend when we've got the hot rods and classic cars around. So how about that? Just enough according to my calculations, and It is just enough to get the job done. And once again, like making a cake, looks like I might need to lick the bowl just to get enough mixture out. Well, that's all the dirty work done. Now I've got it here on the bench. And dude in the V8's on his way home now. Now I can attend any repairs that need doing. So I'm going to cut a strip to reinforce the slightly rusted bottom edge of the doorway. And I have this handy strip here that's exactly the right width, because I use this strip here as the surrounds for the doorways in my own stoves, which you can see in the link that's just appearing at the top now. Hey, quick quiz. This tool that I've got in my hand now is named after a woman. Can anybody tell me what the woman's name is? Answers on the back of a postcard. Nah, just drop it in the comments below if you know what that lady's name is that those things are called. What I'm doing now is just marking out for a series of plug holes that I'm going to drill in it, and then each of those holes will be drilled out to about 6mm, quarter of an inch, and I'll plug weld through those so that the whole thing is welded all the way along its length. Well, every 2 inches all the way along its length. And that brings me to the final job. That door handle needed repairing, so the square piece of steel shafting that I've got here was originally that piece in the middle of a door lock that makes the two handles work in unison. But it needs to have a spike put on one end, so I'm going to grind each face equally on an angle and hopefully end up with a nice little sharp spike that I can shove the file handle onto, and then I'll weld that to the remainder of the stove lock that wasn't broken. Well, as you can see, I've got a handle on it now. So, what else have we got lying around? Ah, yes! Remember those homemade fire bricks? Well, it's now 3 days later, and they've dried. So, I'll cut those into the lengths of the bricks. Doing it in 2 cuts because there's a layer of wire mesh in the middle. Ah, very nice, as Borat would say. I need to get 7 of these bricks. There are 3 long and 4 short. It is time, Igor. Bring me the wood. It's taken me a little bit of playing to learn quite how this dragon breathes, but I'm happy with it. I've got the secondary boom tube up there working well. It's a new one that I made out of stainless steel. That was one of the components that turned out to be missing from the stove. When I picked it up, of course you can't see what's not there, so I didn't realise that that wasn't there. So I didn't realise that that was missing. It's a fairly clean burn. Doesn't burn quite as hot as my little stoves, but then this thing does have the facility to be shut down overnight. It sort of operates in the bottom end of the heat scale, whereas mine is more. My stoves are more of a Formula 1. They tend to operate more in the top end, and they perform well, but and they perform well with no smoke. These ones are designed to quieten right down and burn through the night, so you do get a bit of smoke when you quieten them down. And it's old technology. It's a 20-year-old stove now. It was the very first of the double burning stoves. I've just closed the damper. You can see how the flame action has quietened right down. That's 20-year-old glass. I can't get it any cleaner than this. I've tried. And there's the smoke from quietening it down. This is why wood stoves get banned in urban areas, because if everybody had one of these and everybody went to bed and did this, when you wake up in the morning, it would be a dirty little town that you live in. If I open it up, it should pick up and start roaring again, and the smoke should go away. There you go. Smoke cleans out. It is what it is. It's a free fireplace. I've had a couple of days fun working on it, and it's one thing that I'm not going to have to actually purchase for my new house.